Hello there friends and welcome. For today's Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader Guide we have everything about the newest story companion, Kibellah, the Death Cult Assassin added by the Void Shadows DLC. She comes with the new BLADEDANCER base archetype, one of the most fun additions to the game because of how powerful it can be even early. As a matter of fact, it is definitely the class that can achieve the highest amount of attacks per round, even without being buffed by your officer's finest hour heroic action. So it's a blast to play from even early, as you'll be constantly waltzing through the battlefield, spamming all of your powerful attacks and abilities. For not only lots of damage capable of easily one-shotting most foes later, with even amazing heals for every single enemy killed, with an enormous dodge score as well to easily tank enemies with light armors. And you'll be combining it with the Assassin archetype to achieve the ultimate damage possible for our Kibellah. So without further ado, let us get into our Kibellah the Death Cult Assassin build. Kibellah will come the earliest at level 4, I believe, with the In Footsteps of Death unique BLADEDANCER talent kinda poor, I'm afraid. The effect is really disappointing because it only works on her next turn, and ideally you just wanna kill stuff as fast as possible, something Kibellah herself can do because of some abilities like Death from Above and Blade Dance, that I'll cover in the how to play section. Anyways, for level 5, we have a new generic talent. My preferred pick early is Nimble, because it will increase your dodge, Kibellah's most powerful way of defending against enemy attacks, although parry can also be high for her. But this has great synergy with Assassin levels later for higher lethality. Then start increasing agility, her most important stat, not just for higher dodge, also higher initiative, but it directly increases the damage of your Death from Above, the same for weapon skill. Now for the first unique BLADEDANCER power, Blood Oath is absolutely the must-have pick. This costs a few wounds to activate, but the effects are really powerful. And it is always the starter key piece of your never-ending flurry of attacks combo with a BLADEDANCER. You'll mark one enemy, can be any enemy but only works once per enemy, you have pretty much unlimited range on it. And your next attack against that target cannot be dodged or parried, which is amazing for melee enemies on Unfair because they tend to have very high dodge and parry. Ranged enemies not really because you always hit them with melee attacks. But melee ones are tough. Anyways, if the attack kills the target, you'll not only regain a lot of hit points, which kind of pays for the cost, but also gain +1 AP with an additional attack this turn. This last effect, the AP and attack, only triggers once, but as far as hit points and 100% accuracy, it always works. The best part, of course, is that you can spam this multiple times because it costs 0 AP, so once per enemy. Now, for skills, it's gonna depend on the rest of your party. For example, if I'm going with Kibellah, I won't be using Abelard because I'd rather have only one melee party member, in which case I would go for Athletics because otherwise no one else in my party will cover this, and there's loads of athletics checks in the game. At least one per new area. But of course, if you already have Abelard or Ofer the Space Marine, Marazai even, you can pick something else. The second best skill for her would be Medicae. This does have synergy with Executioner levels, the new prestige class, but we'll be going Assassin, so it's not really that necessary. I'd rather focus into Athletics, or whatever other skills your party members won't cover, like Demolition if you don't have Argenta, because Kibellah will have very high agility. The same for Awareness, which is always a nice pick because it's checked multiple times for, well, every party member, so you won't miss any secret items, and the game has loads of them. For me it's Athletics, followed by more agility, and for our first true BLADEDANCER talent, Blood Rush. This talent is very good because of the amazing synergy it has with Blood Oath we just picked. Whenever you use an ability that costs hit points, you'll gain +3 movement points. Great because if you really want to spam as many attacks as possible with Kibellah, chances are it's gonna be multiple deaths from above, you need to have decent enough mobility. Because when you attack normally or use your Blade Dance, you will not be able to move on the same turn. However, because of the fact you can just spam Blood Oath at will pretty much once per enemy, you'll always be regaining movement points, as this ability triggers every time, there's no cooldown or whatever, or limitation, which means you can keep on moving towards enemies, and using Death from Above, which does have a decent 3-cell radius range. While you could also use Death from Above to move, it's wasteful, because ideally you want to hit the enemy with it. So Blood Rush is here to stay. After that, more athletics or your skill of choice, followed by characteristic training, agility, for even higher agility of course. But you can also go for dueling mastery for higher parry. I'd rather more agility. For the first upgrade to your Death Vault's heroic action, which by the way is extremely strong, because it essentially deletes one enemy from existence by virtue of hitting so many times for free. Anyways, you absolutely want the second upgrade, which not only instantly provides you with 4 additional charges of Death from Above, your most powerful spammable ability, since it doesn't cost any AP and doesn't prevent you from attacking, plus it even empowers it further with additional damage equal to your agility bonus, which of course will always be high, as our most important stat. After that, what we want is the Facing the End talent. As I'll explain in the How to Play section, early on, because of how many times you'll be activating Blood Oath, Kibellah will be accumulating lots of injuries and traumas. However, by virtue of having this talent, you'll actually be buffed, especially traumas, which will provide you with plus 10 agility and weapon skill for each. Your most important stats, of course. This is mostly for Act 1. Because of the way injuries and trauma work, basically the highest your hit points, the less you'll get them. Once you finish increasing agility, go for weapon skill, for higher critical and to hit chance. Even if you already have a 100% hit chance with Blood Oath, weapon skill will still increase your Death from Above damage. For the second BLADEDANCER power, well, you might as well pick a defensive one since you already have the best offensive one, Blood Oath. And either Veil of Blades, which will highly increase your parry in a huge area against one side you choose, for all enemies inside that area, plus even the very fun and unique ability of deflecting enemy ranged attacks back at them, because it does let you parry ranged attacks based on your weapon skill. Or you can go with Acrobatic Artistry, which has 2 unique benefits. First, it lets you repeat your Death from Above uses in reverse. So if you use a lot of Death from Above, you'll reverse it always. Just that usually you'll be killing enemies with Death from Above, so it's not like you'll be hitting anything when you do it backwards. But anyways, the second part is also very good. Kibellah will immediately retreat to the spot she started battle, ideally behind cover, so it's amazing for defenses as well. Honestly, just pick what you prefer, both are amazing for extra defenses. I do think Veil of Blaze is more fun though, especially because if you go for Artistry, you kinda have to move back towards the enemies. But they also have to move to where you are to hit you, so it kinda evens out. For another BLADEDANCER talent, we want to increase our hit points through the very unique Race Against Death. This will increase your maximum HP based on your dodge divided by 10, which of course is very high even at this point in the game because of high agility and the nimble talent we just picked. It's actually a very nice boost to hit points, especially for the early game. Followed by more weapon skill, and after you max athletics or whatever skill, I would just increase either Medicae or awareness. Then for another generic talent, It Will Not Die, to start increasing your hit points, and by the way, it does stack with Race Against Death. So even early, your Kibellah can be decently tanky. Plus of course, the more HP, the less injuries and traumas you're getting, so it doesn't become overwhelming. Then more awareness for me, followed by toughness. I'd rather get this to increase your hit points even further, because as far as strength, the benefits are rather minimal, and toughness at least will increase the heal on kill effect from Blood Oath. But there's a lot of toughness buffs as well, so you can go with strength if you prefer. For the last BLADEDANCER talent, honestly there's a lot of great stuff here. Sadly we can only pick more during the exemplar levels, but there's a few options. Bloody Requiem is one of my preferred picks because it increases your resolve by +1 for every enemy you kill, and stacks with the Face of the Sovereign helmet. The higher your resolve, the more heroic actions you are generating for your party. You can also go for Unforgiving, however, which increases your damage based on your toughness bonus, another reason to increase it, whenever you lose HP, which of course is always because you are spamming Blood Oath. Plus Rising Temple to increase your damage for every attack you make. stacking up to 3 times. Even Guillotine to increase the damage of death from above against enemies with less than 50% wounds, which has synergy with other party members' attacks like Cassie's Lidless Stare if she doesn't one-shot enemies. I'd honestly go for either Guillotine or Bloody Requiem because resolve boosts are always golden. Followed by the first upgrade to Death Vaults. It immediately heals you to full, which is great, and also reduces the cost of your Blood Oath by half. Amazing. Now, as far as the second archetype, while you could go for Executioner, which is the newest archetype added by the Void Shadows DLC, I'd much rather Assassin. I mean, Kibellah is a Death Cult assassin, so it fits her thematically. Plus, you have a lot of synergy with some assassin abilities and Bladedancer. First, the opening mechanic with Assassin that generates openings at the side of enemies is very easy to hit through Kibellah's Death from Above ability because you can choose the side of the enemy you are landing upon. And that's of course even more Death from Above damage. You'll have a lot of abilities based on lethality, which is equal to your dodge, also high for Kibellah because of high agility. And most importantly, absolutely busted synergy with the first assassin power we are picking at level 17. Killing Edge. Killing Edge will add loads of extra damage to your attacks based on your lethality, which of course is way higher than this during battle. However, it does have a crippling downside of highly increasing the enemy's dodge. This doesn't matter, however, because through Blood Oath, since we have a 100% hit chance, you can bypass this limitation just fine. Now, for the first Assassin talent, this is usually the same for most Assassin builds. First, you want Deadly Calculation. For every 10 damage dealt, your attack will also deal +1 direct damage. Great for both higher damage and the fact we will be generating lots of extra lethality based on direct damage soon enough. The Assassin Heroic Action Dispatch is very subpar compared to your Bladedancer's Death Vaults, so you'll never be using it. Then go back to Agility Increases, followed by your second very powerful Assassin talent, Lethality Heightens. Whenever you deal 5 or more direct damage, which is great because we do have Deadly Calculation for that, you'll also gain +10 stacking lethality, which by the way, will increase your Killing Edge damage, plus some other assassin stuff. Then more agility, and for skills is the same as before, athletics or whatever else you want. For the second assassin power, Danse Macabre is my preferred pick because it provides you with even more mobility, as you can essentially move twice for free, so you won't even need to pay hit points through Blood Oath for that. After that, you'll want Mortally Effective. Whenever you hit a target with 100 lethality or more, you'll immediately gain the AP spent for that attack. Great because of how many abilities you have as a Bladedancer to spam more attacks. After maxing agility, just go back to weapon skill. For another generic talent, well, at this point you might as well pick Dueling Mastery unless you picked it before. We do have Veil of Blades that lets us parry attacks with greater ease. Then for level 25, Professional Acumen should reduce the first use of an assassin ability cost to 0. Quite welcome because you do have a Seek the Opening ability which automatically reveals an opening at the front of the enemy or whatever side you're facing. Then more weapon skill, followed by more athletics. Even if you won't have high strength, it still helps you have athletics and you can buff it through gear. Grab any upgrade for dispatch because like I said, you'll never be using it, might as well go for the second one. Then characteristic training and weapon skill, followed by perfect opening for higher damage whenever hitting enemies' openings. After that, go back to toughness increases, or strength if you prefer. Then more awareness once you max athletics, and Death Whisper for an extra attack. It will deal very low damage, but, well, it's a free attack. What's not to love? For another generic talent, I'd go for Bloody Mass, which can highly increase your critical damage. By double even, it's just that the chance is kinda minor, 10% only. Because it's not a guaranteed benefit, well, that's why I delay it for now. But you can pick it earlier if you prefer. Followed by Killing Spree to constantly increase your damage based on your agility when hitting openings. Then more awareness. At this point you already have the best assassin talent, so you might as well pick Bringer of Doom to reduce enemies' armor, it's just that it doesn't stack, so kinda disappointing. Then at the next level, Lone Killer to increase your dodge even further. It does have the limitation of not having nearby allies, but as a melee character, You won't, unless you have more melee party members, in which case you can always go for something like Bringer of Doom, followed by more toughness, and characteristic training, toughness again, plus any upgrade for the assassin heroic action, like the first one here. Now let us cover exemplar progression for our BLADEDANCER assassin Kibellah. As always, as any damage-focused character, you'll definitely want Extermination first, especially because of how many attacks Kibellah can spam on a single turn, and you'll get +1 flat damage for each. Thankfully, we can finally get more BLADEDANCER talents now. I'd first go for Blood Oath to restore 1 additional AP. It's only once per turn, but the more AP you have at this point, the better. Followed by more Athletics, and honestly any assassin talents from now onwards, such as Bringer of Doom, then more Agility, and well, you might as well pick characteristic training Strength now, if only because you have the space for it, or any increase to a skill of choice, like Athletics. The thing about Kibellah's unique talents is that I just don't think they're quite good, because I find them to be somewhat slow when you consider how powerful your alpha strikes are, especially with BLADEDANCER even early. But the best one to me would be Crimson Tide. Just go for higher strength. And any other BLADEDANCER talent. The ones remaining are kinda poor, but you might as well pick Acrobatic Artistry for even more mobility if you want. Followed by Athletics or whatever you want. Then Cataclysm for even higher damage boosts. It's just nowhere near as good as Extermination, because it's percentage based instead of extra flat damage. But another very nice option is Revenge. Whenever you lose wounds, your next melee attack will gain +1 damage for every 2 points lost. Something very easy for Kibellah, because even if it only works for one single next attack, you are constantly losing HP anyways by activating Blood Oath. And this is flat damage, much better than percentage damage from Cataclysm. Or just go with Cataclysm and pick Revenge later, followed by an Eye for the Unscathed. Then more Agility, and Blade in his hand for extra damage percentage, equal to your Agility bonus, which is very high at this point, when both dual-wielding or two-handing swords. And you might as well pick Poise to Strike for another assassin power, because at least it can reduce enemies' deflection and armor, followed by more weapon skill, and whatever for assassin talents from now on, like Outsmart, and whatever other generic common talent now. I just go for a base skill of choice like Athletics since you don't have very high strength. As far as Combat Master, I don't think it's that important for Kibellah, who has a very easy time killing enemies, so they won't be ganking on her, melee ones anyways. Well, something fun you can do now, even earlier, is pick the dual wielding feat, dual weapon combat. I just don't pick it earlier because I prefer to use her with two-handed weapons. But at this point, Act 4, you can get 2 unique long swords for her, so it works. But don't forget you can pick it, as early as this level here instead of more strength. Level 38, I believe. Which should be around when you get your unique swords. Then more awareness. It's kind of funny that she doesn't have Psychic Awakening. I'm pretty sure she is a latent Psyker in the game. But this would really help increase her damage in the late game. She has more than enough anyways, I suppose. Well, you might as well go for Critical Velocity, which will increase critical hit chance, not that important, but critical damage is very good. By a 5% of your dodge. Thankfully during battle you can have very high dodge at this moment, higher than 200% even. Even then the effect is kinda minor, but we have the space for it. Then, assuming you want to dual wield with her unique swords, go for Dense Partiness for higher weapon skill, followed by more awareness, and it takes 2 for more blade dance attacks. Well, since we already maxed athletics and awareness, I would just go for more Medicae, but it's not really important. Followed by Ambush, not really that good, but we ran out of good stuff to pick. After agility, more weapon skill as usual, and more toughness. Then Medicae, followed by Revenge or Cataclysm depending on what you picked before. Then you might as well pick Unforgiving, which of course can also be picked earlier, it's just that the damage is not that amazing. But at least it's better than the assassin talents we have remaining. So like I said, pick whatever. Let's go for Lethal Concentration. Then more Medicae. And Rising Temple. It's another extra source of percentage damage modifier, but also minor. And well, I'll just be picking Combat Master because we really ran out of great stuff to pick. but there's also swift movements if you want. Plus any other power now. Might as well go for something like Elusive Shadow or Captive Audience, followed by more Toughness, and for the last exemplar talent, Tricky Defense. It's a very minor boost to your dodge, like 15% or so at this point, but it's better than nothing. Of course, you might as well go for Perfection Under Fire for a +5 to all stats, including Agility. Even Peak Condition, which will highly increase your strength at this point, because of how high your HP will be. And you might as well go for either Balancing on the Edge or Blasted Scars. Now let's just do a quick section on how to play with our Kibellah at the early game, so Chapter 1. As always, you want to activate Blood Oath against most targets. For example, this is actually during an extra turn provided by an officer ally, which means we don't have any movement at all, only 2 AP. But we can use Blood Oath, which is free.
As honor ordains.
You will of course take damage. And well, since the enemy is at low health, just use Death from Above, as you'll always start the battle with 1 charge. And we'll definitely easily kill this guy here. There we go, we already healed a lot of HP, and we got more movement from our Blood Rush ability, which is why it's so good, which lets us move towards the next enemy here.
Comes in silence.
So Blood Oath again, and now let us go for a Blade Dance. This can hit enemies multiple times, even more if you're dual wielding, but two-handing is good enough. And you'll most likely kill the enemy you target with this, although early on some tougher enemies might survive.
Trust me, killing.
Well, there we go, killed. And we got 1 extra use of Death from Above by killing the enemy. Now, we don't have any movement left, but, well, it's just a matter of using Blood Oath again. So let's do it on these other enemies here. First, the weaker ones.
I feel nothing. Fear
there we go,
nothing.
more movement.
A dance of blades and shadows.
And they are now in range for your Death from Above. I didn't really explain it before, but you should always spam this because it only costs 0 AP. And the damage itself can be good, because it only becomes better and better and better. Now, you don't directly target the enemies with this, rather you have to select a cell nearby them. And you can actually hit multiple enemies if they're touching the same cell. So let us do that.
Come.
And there we go, 2 enemies killed, and we are at full HP now. Do note that you don't actually get more charges to Death from Above if you kill them using this ability. It's only from normal attacks or Blade Dance. There's still 1 enemy left alive. And you can of course just Blood Oath it
As honor ordains.
as you move near.
I bring mercy and retribution.
And we still have 1 attack remaining, so might as well use it. This is a melee enemy, but because we use Blood Oath, we do have a 100% hit chance against him, which is godly.
As the tenets demand.
And there we go. It's pretty nice damage when you use it with a two-handed weapon. So just in the early game, during an extra turn, we already killed a lot of enemies, leaving blood pools all over the map, which serves as a way of increasing her Blood Blast unique buff that grants you stacking extra damage, while enemies will suffer from Blood Stained whenever they are on top of blood pools and move away or inside them. It's the same but extra damage taken. Allies can also benefit from Blood Blast if they are inside the blood pools. Now let us pass. Since this wasn't really our true turn, Kibellah will still have another turn, as once again it was from an officer allies bring it down. So we pass, and she can now do all her powerful stuff again. Notice that, as I explained before, Blood Oath is still active. I'm not sure if they're gonna keep it like this, but basically it marks the enemy and all attacks will work. It's not just the next attack. Anyways, you can go for a two-handed sword and her special dual-wielded blades she starts the game with, or my preferred pick, I didn't equip her with it, which is the Unquenchable Fury Mace to push enemies away. Which of course, for example, you could move here and try to push this enemy towards the other enemy so both would be hit. Anyways, don't forget that both Blade Dance and normal attacks will prevent you from moving, but once again you'll have Blood Oath for extra movement on demand, so long as there are still enemies remaining that have not been hit by Blood Oath yet. But yeah, let's just go for a normal attack and hopefully we can kill this enemy.
I will leave footprints of
There we
scarlet.
go. We already restored hit points and got more death from above. And well, it's the same logic as before, just Blood Oath, the enemy,
Aim for
move,
that heart next time.
death from above.
Trust me. Caught by the web.
You can even critical with death from above, which is great, but early on you won't have the best critical hit chance. Well, you can still use, for example, Blade Dance. So killed again, and we got more death from above. You can always check your remaining charges here. Stack 1 out of 100. And you can actually even get enough range so as to kill the other enemies by using Blood Oath with unlimited range against both.
Will see it done.
Because just one won't be enough for Blade Dance. So just use it on this other one. And there we go, you can move.
Comes in silence.
Now I mentioned this before, but the more hit points you're spending for Blood Oath in the same turn, the higher the chances of you getting traumas. But we do have a talent to buff ourselves during that you'll get at the next level. So traumas won't really be that much of an issue for our Kibellah. But anyways, just death from above, and we are going to hit these two enemies here. There we go, killed.
Me no pleasure.
And the good thing is, even with traumas, you'll still be at full health after killing enemies because of Blood Oath. So just repeat. And it's kind of funny because the battlefield will be left with blood pools. And even without an officer's finest hour, we did already get loads of extra turns with our Kibellah. Also, you can still use Blood Oath as to reach ranged enemies because if you are close to them, they cannot attack you at all. They'll have to move away and hit attacks of opportunity. This is only for ranged enemies, melee ones can still attack you, however. Now what about Act 2+? Well, by now you have Assassin levels, which means once your true turn comes, it doesn't work on extra turns, you'll be able to benefit from the opening mechanic surrounding the side of each enemy. But the logic is the same. Also, don't forget, your Death Vault's heroic action is absolutely busted since it already provides a huge amount of extra death from above charges and even higher damage. And I kind of forgot, but you can also use it as a desperate measure. The consequence is not really that troublesome, it just gives you one trauma, but okay, we have a talent to overcome that and be buffed under traumas. It's just that when paying a lot of HP through your Blood Oath and you suffer a trauma, your momentum will decrease, which will put in range for the desperate measure version of Death Vaults sometimes. Anyways, this is a death sentence on whatever enemy you choose to be its target.
Dance of blade.
Let's pick this guy here, since I don't think we can hit its opening because it's not really a selectable spot, unfortunately.
The undying emperor.
But yeah, you'll just keep on dancing around it and dealing loads of damage. And honestly, it's the same logic as before, except now, because of the openings, you can simply use death from above to land directly on top of the enemy's opening for higher damage.
Honor ordained. Come.
There we go.
Side awaits.
And depending on the distance, you won't even need to use Blood Oath. Don't forget you also have the Danse Macabre assassin ability to move towards enemies if needed.
I cannot serve you in this way.
And you can even activate it twice per turn. Also, as an assassin, you can use the highly powerful Killing Edge ability to hit the enemy's opening and deal enormous amounts of damage. Ideally with chainsaw type weapons instead of your sword. Leave the swords for the BLADEDANCER abilities. Since chainsaws, of course, will hit multiple times.
Brings me no pleasure.
Plus, they really fit the whole leaving blood pools at the enemy's deaths. Besides that, you can also use aim for the opening to activate an opening on an enemy at the side you're facing. But you do need line of sight for it. It's better for extra turns when the openings won't be revealed yet. Now let us cover gear for our Kibellah the Death Coat Assassin, first with Chapter 1 options. For the helmet, I would much rather replace her starter Spinner's Mask because the effect is rather poor. It takes somewhat long to get 10 stacks of Blood Blast, And well, +1 resolve for that is really disappointing. You might as well go for the Face of the Sovereign, which is 1 extra resolve whenever killing an enemy. Very easy to do with her. Looks also nice for an assassin type of character. But if you don't have it, you know, there's always the Deck Officer's Helmet for plus 5% armor, or the Helmet of the Devoted Protector for immunity against critical hits for the first 3 rounds of combat. For armor you have 2 options, the Spinner's Ritual Vestments, which is nice for extra dodge, even a minor extra HP, and decent armor score, or her very own starter armor, the Light Spinner's Breastplate. For talismans, the Martyr's Bone Charm she already starts with, so that whenever you are affected by Bloodfile, and she does have that permanently, you'll get plus 10 toughness for 2 rounds. Besides that, we have the new Blood Drinker Ring to restore 1 hit points on every melee attack. For cloaks, I really like the Emergency Injector on her. As we saw in the How to Play section, Kibellah will be acquiring lots of traumas early on, so this can help her revive if needed, as some traumas can reduce HP. But you know, early she'll have even higher hit points than Cassia herself. For boots, the Skirmisher boots, so that whenever she deals damage, she'll have a pretty high chance of regaining movement. But you do have Blood Oath for that, it's just that this won't cost any HP, and you have many attacks per round. Now, for gloves, you can go with Crimson Oblivion, which is unique to difficult assassins, so that you're constantly generating blood pools behind enemies you kill. But I'd much rather the Relished Anguish for the amazing synergy with the Unquenchable Fury Mace that I already covered in my Abelard build, to generate lots of extra HP for her early, when you need them the most. And yes, I still think the Mace makes for a great secondary weapon to push enemies for extra damage, whenever you want to hit them with a single attack, or the area of effect attack even. For the main sword weapon, since swords are required to use your most powerful Blade Dancer abilities, I prefer to go with two-handed instead of dual wielding early, and Silent Verdict is a very powerful option. The base damage is great, it increases your parry, and most importantly, provides you with a stacking amount of critical hit chance increases for every attack. Quite welcome early game when you won't have the highest critical hit chance possible. Now let us cover Act 2 options. The biggest upgrade here is cloak-wise, and of course we want the Malpian Shroud, because it will be one of the easiest ways of adding extra damage to your Death from Above ability, which can of course be higher than this, depending on your party. If you're going with my builds, it will definitely be, because once again you have the Invigorating Resolve Talisman to help you. Of course it doesn't have as high synergy with Kibellah than Abelard, because she will be spending hit points to activate Blood Oath, but depending on how buffed she is, she doesn't really need that, as you preserve the extra damage to your depths from above, which of course when combined with assassin stuff, means you'll be dealing very high damage to enemies. For boots, I like the Adrenaline War boots, which can increase your dodge by a pretty nice amount for higher lethality and more tanking. And well, it's basically just an upgrade. For the mace, we want a chainsaw instead. I have the Rusty Chainsaw here, but you can upgrade it into the same one I use for Abelard for 4 strikes, and a huge amount of armor penetration. It's just that I didn't get enough faction reputation for it yet here. And by that I mean the Heavy Emergency Cutter Chainsaw. Now let us cover Act 3 plus gear options. Act 4 is when Kibellah gets a lot of new gear, because when you finish her personal quest, you'll get around 4 exclusive pieces, first with the Lingering Whisper Helm. They make for a nice enough full set in that they look great on her, but as far as the helmet effect, it's not really that good. It lets you deal quite a lot of extra flat damage against enemies with less than 50% wounds. It's just that at this point in the game, Act 4, you'd much rather instantly kill the enemy, so one-shot them. For that, we have the Vivisector's Visor, which is much better because it will highly increase the damage you deal whenever you hit an opening. Very easy with our assassin Kibellah because she can just dance around enemies. It just won't look as cool as the Lingering Whisper when you have the full set though. Speaking about that, you also have the Bygone Sorrow Light Armor, also from her last quest. This has good enough defenses, 45% armor, despite being light armor. Also plus 10% dodge and parry if you aren't in cover, great because Kibellah has a lot of mobility. And if you have 8 more stacks of the Blood Blast ability, you'll get +1 AP and +1 attack per turn. This does take a while to get though, because it's based on the blood pool she leaves after killing enemies. She also gets 2 new swords for dual wielding. Singing Retribution, which is pretty good, because it actually deals higher damage against enemies with more than 50% wounds, so helps you one-shot them. And Whispering Mercy, which is the same, but enemies with less than 50% wounds. Not as good, I'm afraid. But you can also keep 2 two-handed weapons, such as with the Righteous Justice sword. Quite unique in that it has multiple benefits the more you are dogmatic aligned. And well, depending on how you finish her quest, she can actually have 4 ranks in dogmatic, so that you get almost all benefits. That is, up to the second one. So you can ignore the dodge of Xenos, Demons, and Psychers, and also their deflection, which is the best part, because these are the most dangerous enemies in the game. Besides that, there's also the Cold-Blooded Greatsword. Both come from the Dungeons faction, I believe. This has a unique double-edged strike ability, which actually inflicts damage to yourself, but doesn't count against the attack limit per turn. And Kibellah can easily heal it back through Blood Oath. For our second weapon, we definitely want more chainsaws. It's the same for my Abelard build. The LD pattern chainsaw because it has the highest strike count, 5 per attack. Amazing for assassin with killing edge. Besides that, the absolutely most powerful gear for her in Act 4+ is the BLADEDANCER Mantle. This will increase the damage of your most spammable Death from Above ability by absolutely hilariously broken amounts, equal to 3 times your resolve, so we have plus 351 extra Death from Above damage at 0 AP, refreshing once per kill. Doesn't get any better than that. Actually, you can go even higher because it's super easy to increase your resolve at this point in the game. Especially if you go with my Pyro God Psyker build, as you'll be a master tactician capable of buffing Kibellah with Linchpin for Uber Resolve, the same for officers with Air of Authority, as it all stacks. So yeah, this is one-shot City Central for Kibellah's Death from Above. The other gear doesn't matter that much, but the Notes on Weakness accessory can be quite helpful. It's kind of a double-edged sword, it comes from the Drusians faction and well, can increase your damage to direct damage by an amount that's your lethality divided by 10. And at this point, because of your super high dodge and other assassin abilities, Kibellah can have super high lethality in the scores of hundreds, like 400 plus. Doubled even if you attack an opening, also very easy for her. The major downside is that when you activate Blood Oath, it counts as if inflicting direct damage to yourself, so you actually pay more HP when you use Notes on Weakness. But she can heal such high amounts anyways on enemy kills that it won't matter that much, especially because of how high her HP can be at this point in the game. It still is not really necessary, but it's a nice enough extra source of damage. It's just that when you have the BLADEDANCER's Mantle, you don't really need more damage, so feel free to skip this if you want. It's better on other characters like Erliet or Marazai, who don't increase the damage they inflict to themselves. For talismans, you can also go with the Saint's Bone Charm, which increases your toughness whenever affected by a blood file, and she can always use this during battle. I also have the Injection Adapter here, for some extra temporary HP, but mostly so combat stimulants will cost 0 AP. And there's always the classic Scorcher, which is easily replenishable from a colony event, and also Stim for more AP. And of course, I'm all about more gear suggestions if you guys have them. Anyways, this was it for our Kibellah the Death Cult Assassin build. If you found this guide useful as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member if you can. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for watching, and see you next time, friends.